Now let's talk about issues of health, and we're talking about women and pregnancy. In some parts of the Upper West region, some women will not go to health facilities to deliver because of taboos within the community in which they live. At Kulung in the Wa East district, women won't attend antenatal care because the customs and traditions of that community bars them from doing that. Let's follow what happens there in that community.
In their house, they have, it's a taboo for them to go to the facility to deliver. And they continue telling them that they shouldn't go there to deliver.
They have all believed this for years. They have not questioned it because it is a taboo. Women are not allowed to deliver at the health facility from Kulung community.
This is from the ancestral period, from generation to generation, that their grandparents have vowed that they should never go to the hospital to deliver. And that is a taboo to go to the hospital or facility to deliver. And that the reason is that if they refuse and go there and deliver, the child will die. And that they had a first experience, that a woman went there and delivered, and she came home, and later on the child died.
Some have 1, 2, or 3, and they have done it at home. The reason is fear of going against tradition. They are mentored of what led to this taboo. Community leaders have a change of mind now, following interventions by the district health management team.
The
first time, if somebody was in labor, the TBAs will come around and they will put in pressure on the woman, push, without any support. And in the course of that kind of pressure, push, the woman could even lose her life. But because of the interaction between Ghana Health Service, there has been changes because they've adopted to accept to go to the health facility to deliver. And all those challenges have now been addressed. They no longer don't experience that kind of difficulty in childbirth.
The upgrading of the Yala Health Center by the district health management team will totally change this.
The maternity ward we are building is not going to, be an ordinary maternity ward. The initiative is that we are having a future plan that we want to build it so that it will have the theater status.
The women of Kulung now understands the need to deliver at health facilities. This is expected to improve maternal mortality. All right, and we'll be talking about issues of women pregnancy, issues of mental health, and other health issues very soon. But what's making your Monday Easter more exciting? The group Kwanpa is here. I'm sure you'll be relishing another bout of palm wine high life. So I'm handing you over to the group. They will entertain us more.
Sujeni bi kwa wariasi, awariasi o sujeni bi kwa wariasi. Akasa baya watie siabonte. Ayonku semti odia semnu tuja. Sujeni bi kwa wariasi, awariasi o sujeni bi kwa wariasi. Akasa baya watie siabonte. Ayonko semti odia semno ne nam toano nareka oni pebia wasemka oni pebia wonkomo onyansani pentemti nempenkeka onyansani pentemti nempe toano nareka oni pebia wasemka Oni pebia wonkomo onyansani pentemti nempenkeka onyansani pentemti nempenkeka unyansani pentemti nempe unyansani pentemti nempe kika sudeni bi kwa wariasi awariasi o sudeni bi kwa wariasi akasa baya wate se abontin ayonko semti ode asem no tuja sudeni bi kwa wariasi awariasi o sudeni bi kwa wariasi akasa baya wate se abontin ayonko semti ode asem no ne nam towano na reka oni pebia wasemka oni pebia onkomo onyansani pentemti nempe onyansani pentemti nempe onyansani pentemti nempe onyansani pentemti nempe keka krache chiko emfa wo nka yen wate unim nipa ye yanka wasori efri da bereho krache message ko emfa wo nka yen wate unim nipa ye yanka wasori efri da bereho krache chiko me na me ye doctor no krache chiko me na me ye lawyer no enti de me nso so me ne mo kire mai meyi wa film paso de wako ba bia ho enyu chiko me ne finance officer me na me ye MP no enti de me nso so me ne mo kire mai meyi wa film paso de wako ba.
All right, and we're still making sure you have an exciting Monday morning, Easter holiday. I guess you're getting ready to step out, but you have to stay right here because we'll be dishing out more of those palm wine high life whilst we discuss health. This morning, you just saw the story from the Upper West region where the women there would not attend health facilities because of taboo, some cultural norms in their communities. And of course, persons with mental disabilities and access to healthcare. We'll be taking a look at that. My guest this morning is a technical advisor at the Human Rights Advocacy Center, Wendy Abbey. Wendy, good morning. Hope you're doing great.
Very well.
How's your Easter?
Yeah, it's all right. Taking time off to rest. Yes.
Great. Let's begin from here. Is it surprising that in the 21st century, and from where we have come from, with some taboos, some norms in some communities bar women from accessing healthcare, particularly pregnant women? Is it strange?
Well, interestingly, it may not be strange to the people that live in the communities.
Right.
And for those of us who are not in the communities, it is important also to understand their perspective. But moving forward, would have to look into engaging in progressive conversations.
Right, with the community.
Exactly, with the community.
For you people, for instance, at the Human Rights Advocacy Center, this is one of the challenges I guess you might be taking. Exactly,
and the issues of culture and traditions spans across all areas of life. It's about people's identities, about people's unique experiences. But I think it's time we take second look at how we can engage in constructive conversations where we look at the histories of these taboos or cultural notions surrounding issues, and then pretty much looks at how we can refocus on issues that pertains to the persons in those communities.
And pull up some change.
Exactly.
Right. Now, let's talk about persons with mental disabilities and access to health. You have engaged them at all levels, and you've known what they go through, their challenges, the difficulties and all that. Is healthcare for persons with mental disabilities readily available?
The question would be also to look at where you are located. Yes, so you cannot generally say it's readily available.
Depending on where you are. So there are the regional dynamics, there are the district dynamics, geographical dynamics basically. There are also the dynamics to whether you can afford these services. And basically, generally, you'd have close to 650,000 persons, we are told, that live with mental disabilities. And even with that, there are different shades of disabilities. So you have to look at what shade of disability you are talking about and what
services are available, across which spectrum of location or populations who can actually afford those services.
Right. Now, even before we then delve into the shades of disabilities and the services they can access, now when you say that, it depends on where you are you suggesting that perhaps if we divide the country into rural and urban, one of these two would have a disadvantage in terms of access to care?
Most definitely, because what makes up an urban community tells us that, okay, there's infrastructure, there are services that meet the growing population, the needs of the growing population. And what actually also makes up a rural area tells the other side of the story, which usually they are disadvantaged, even in terms of their capacity, in terms of earnings to afford certain services. Exactly.
Now, okay, so those in urban centers are better off in terms of access.
Yes, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of services, in terms of even the numbers of psychiatric nurses or psychiatrists or psychologists to actually make themselves available to even work in facilities. So you have those dimensions also coming into play.
Then you talk about shades and the shades of mental disability, and then the kind of service that you can go for. Can you explain that?
So let me just cite an example where at the initial stage of any form of mental illness, you probably will need just a psychologist to give you counsel. At this point, we know that there are a lot of attempts being made to mainstream mental health treatment. But you ask yourself, at what level? You can talk of the big hospitals that actually have psychologists present at the moment. You talk of Kolebu, you talk of Ifian Kwanta, you talk of 37, you talk of Ridge, Lekma Hospital, all those places. But beyond those points, if you develop any form of mental illness, which require you to go beyond just having
the psychologist,
yes,
you have a difficulty.
Exactly. So that is the
Then again, let's also jump into the issue of those in rural communities. Now, if that is their situation, then how do they access care?
Right. So generally, there's an aspect of mental treatment that is not often spoken about, or even when it's spoken about, usually the reports are in bad taste. So we can talk of persons who provide traditional forms of treatment.
Mental treatment?
Exactly. So you have operators of traditional mental health centers who sort of trying to meet the gap in treatment for persons with mental illness. And so you have these forms of treatment that, first of all, in terms of disadvantages that persons located in rural areas have to access orthodox treatment, they find these other forms of treatment more readily available, sometimes more convenient also.
Is it the best?
Best is relative, like I said, depending on what shade of illness you're talking about, and also whether in our setting we have actually advanced the scientific proof of most of these treatments. But because nonetheless,
I'm not cutting, but in some situations where you've seen these centers where some people are chained, I mean, the person just has I don't know how to put it, but a quick bout of attack, and so he or she is his or her behavior changes, and he or she is taken to this place, and sometimes they are chained, all as part of the treatment process. Is this the best in those rural communities?
Perhaps in terms of what we would say the rights-based approach, it is not. Looking at how you provide conditions that are more dignifying when you are treating mental illness. So it is not. And of course you have the mental health authority, taking steps to engage in conversations with operators and also to unshackle most of these persons held in these centers. So generally, as a human rights condition for persons who are supposed to be in dignified environments for treatment, we would say it is not. So it is important also that, but the forms of treatment, some of them actually have been verified, and
they've been proven to be. So you're suggesting that these traditional mental health operators, they have a huge role in taking care of the mentally disadvantaged.
Most definitely, and we have authorities like Mental Health Authority who are aware that they have a huge role to play. The current Mental Health Act actually makes provision or cites them that these other forms of treatment, particularly spiritual forms of treatment, should come under some form of collaboration where Mental Health Authority works with them actually to see that the needed conditions prevail in those places.
And
so
the operations are regulated?
So there are different forms of operators in the field. So there are persons who use just basically herbal treatment. And most of these forms of treatment provided by these persons are regulated by the Alternative Medicines Practitioners Council. So there's actually a council that was set up based on an act that was passed on traditional medicine practice in Ghana. There are others who do not fall under the spectrum of this act or licensed by the council.
So they are those who engage in all kinds of illegal activity.
So it's very highly probable that some of them actually do not have any monitoring or oversight authority over their activities. And
that's why people get chained for years.
Exactly. So you have a lot of them. But increasingly you have a lot of NGOs like Basic Needs, My Freedom, our organization, Mental Health Authority itself, actually working to engage with these operators. Yes.
So in this conversation of treatment of mental health, mental illness, now what is it that can be done to get the conversation to the level we want it to get to?
So mostly we want this approach to be taken, that at the end of the day, these other forms of treatment are authentically Ghanaian. You go to other places in the Oriental places. You can talk of Chinese having their own forms of traditional medicines and practice. What we are calling for is a more progressive discourse on the subject of treatment where you have traditional forms of treatment,
right,
having conversations with orthodox forms of treatment, see where the level ground is.
Can it work?
It is possible. Anything is possible. Most often than not, it starts with conversations. It starts with research. It starts with understanding the areas of practice, either those offered even by the orthodox practitioners and others who are not, or as we would call traditional medicine practitioners. So,
but particularly when we tend to assume that the traditional methods or practices are not in sync with what the orthodox would do. Is there no problem, a huge gap in between the two?
I think it goes beyond just having that assumption, if I should say. We need to undertake proper research to find out. And that is, first of all, just to understand what is a traditional practice all about. Because most of the reports you have received are in bad taste, that usually the other side of the coin is what is shown to everybody else. It's about the abuses, it's about the chaining. But remove all the abuses. If there are guidelines, operational guidelines for these operators, how well do we also find out the substantive matter of treatment, not just the conditions? So it calls for a lot of research. It calls for a lot of insights to be able to understand what the whole practice is about. And my organization is seeking to do that in terms of engaging with the operators, looking at understanding the practice in general. What is traditional medicines or traditional practitioners doing in terms of mental illness? What forms of treatment there are? Because there are some who are not spiritual, there are some who are just traditional, there are some who just use herbal to treat. So how are we able to engage with all the operators in the field?
And so in this, your organization is doing this, the Human Rights Advocacy Center. How is it embarking on this journey?
First of all, we are talking with the stakeholders who are involved in
the
mental health care.
Authority,
Mental Health Authority,
Service,
Ghana Health Service. We are in deep conversations with the Ghana Federation of Traditional Practitioners Associations, other civil society organizations already working in the field like Basic Needs. We have, of course, Star Ghana supporting the entire process. So a lot of people are already, or stakeholders already sharing their experience in the field and also moving forward with us in terms of looking at the various areas we want to work on. And like I said, we are engaging strongly on undertaking research to understand the practice of the services provided by traditional mental health, traditional practitioners. And then also trying to generally discuss issues on stigma surrounding mental illness. Because the other thing about accessibility is that some persons feel that mental illness comes with a lot of stigma. So they won't go out. So they will not even go. So even if the care exactly, even if it's orthodox services, they would not go.
I see. I don't know if your organization has been looking into it, but some time ago, the Ghana Health Service suggested or perhaps implemented a policy where every polyclinic was to have a psychiatry unit. I don't know if you've been going around taking a look at it, if it is indeed there and that these facilities are there. But in your dealings with stakeholders, what do you generally see about mental health, the care, the attention being paid to it? Let's wrap up on this. Right.
There's a lot of policy around it. There's a lot of, I mean, the Mental Health Act aptly addresses the mental illness situations. But in terms of actual practice, we need to do a lot more.
There's a gap.
There's a gap, particularly even resourcing the Mental Health Authority to do its work. So we have been calling for a legislative instrument that it clearly makes provision for financial support for the mental health. That's a huge challenge for the authorities.
Exactly. Dr. Gosho has been complaining almost every
yes,
every time.
And we need to take a second look at that seriously, and also pretty much looking at other structures of awareness raising on mental illness, building the infrastructure for it, even transportation systems and all that can accommodate these minority populations, because it could be you, it could be me, as we say it.
Yeah, that's what we're told. You people said that in every human being there is some insanity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm sure today being a holiday, we'll find a lot of these insanities on our roads. Wendy, grateful for your time with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wendy Abi is a technical advisor at the Human Rights Advocacy Center. We're talking about mental health. We'll tell you more about that.